our broadcast tonight, Korea for the first time opens its casino market to foreign operators to boost the tourism industry. Korea's auto parts exporters are riding high in the global market, logging more than $25 billion in their outbound shipments last year. And plus, defying the West, Russian President Vladimir Putin recognizes Crimea as an independent nation, paving the way for it to be absorbed into Russia. But these stories and more next on ARIRANG News at 8. Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Tuesday, March 18th here in Seoul. I'm Ji Hye. For the first time, Korea has opened its tightly controlled casino market to a foreign operator. It has given a green light to the construction of a foreign-owned casino resort to attract more tourism spending from China. Park Ji-won has our top story.
The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism said at a press briefing Tuesday that it has granted approval to the Indonesian-Chinese enterprise Lippo Group and U.S.-based Caesars Entertainment to open the casino, which will be for foreigners only. The casino will be located some 50 kilometers west of Seoul on Yeongjong-do Island, which is part of the Incheon Free Economic Zone and the location of Incheon International Airport. The approval is for the first phase of the consortium's plan to develop a high-end resort. Phase 1 will see construction of 2 hotels, serviced residences, and a convention center for an estimated cost of roughly $700 million, and completion is expected in 2018. The entire development is expected to cost over $2 billion and will be completed by 2023. The Lippo and Caesars consortium first submitted the proposal to develop the casino resort last year, but the proposal was rejected on the grounds that the plan did not fulfill certain credit rating qualifications. The consortium won approval for the plan after enlarging the size of the investment and submitting suitable credit rating assessments.
The approval is only valid when the joint venture successfully implements certain conditions, such as undergoing an annual audit. This decision was made after a thorough evaluation by related ministries, with the goal of boosting the nation's tourism industry.
The government expects the casino to boost employment and bring in tax revenue, as well as strengthen the competitiveness of the domestic casino industry. It will be the 17th casino in Korea, 16 of which are exclusively for foreigners. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
It's official. The superhero team known as the Avengers is coming to Seoul. Marvel Productions and the city of Seoul signed an agreement on Tuesday, outlined a shooting schedule for Avengers Age of Ultron in the Korean capital. The filming is scheduled for March 30th through April 14th. A good portion of it will take place in the heart of Seoul's Gangnam-gu district, but will also extend to other parts of the capital. The city is already coming up with measures to cope with inconveniences to the public, as areas will have to be shut down for several hours during shooting. Korean model turned actress Soo-hyun has been added to the cast of the blockbuster sequel as a scientist who helps protagonist Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr. Amid ongoing political wrangling over a nuclear security-related bill, President Park Geun-hye called for quick ratification of the long-pending legislature. The Korean leader, who is set to attend the upcoming nuclear security summit in The Hague, stressed it would hurt the international community's confidence in Korea. Yoo Ri-an reports.
President Park Geun-hye has urged lawmakers to promptly pass a nuclear security bill ahead of her attendance at the 2014 Nuclear Security Summit in the Netherlands next week. The NSS is a biennial gathering of world leaders aimed to prevent nuclear terrorism. At a cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Park expressed regret that the National Assembly has failed to approve legislation related to protecting nuclear materials and preventing nuclear disasters in the 2 years since Seoul hosted the global conference. In the 2012 Seoul communique, participating nations had agreed to work toward preventing criminals and terrorists from getting their hands on nuclear materials.
세계가 지켜보고 있는데 핵 안보 관련해서 우리가 다른 나라보다 앞장서서 나가기는커녕 약속한 것마저 지키지 못한다면 국제적으로 얼마나 신뢰를 잃게 되겠습니까? 부디 조속한 시일 내에 국회에서 관련 법안을 통과시켜 주실 것을 부탁드립니다.
Both the ruling and main opposition parties agree that the nuclear security legislation is important, but the bill has been held up in the National Assembly due to political wrangling over other issues of contention. The ruling Saenuri Party condemned the main opposition Democratic Party for refusing to pass the urgent bill, calling the move political warfare. It has asked that an extraordinary session of the National Assembly be convened on Thursday, but without the DP's cooperation, the bill is unlikely to pass. The DP says the Saenuri Party is to blame for the impasse because it has refused to pass bills related to the public's livelihood. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
A three-horse race is on among the ruling Saenuri Party's main contenders vying to become Seoul's next mayor in June. The party is expected to choose a candidate before the end of next month. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil caught up with the party hopefuls on the campaign trail.
The Saenuri Party has three competitive candidates vying to become the party's sole mayoral candidate. Tycoon-turned-politician Chung Mong-jun, former Prime Minister Kim Hwang-sik, and Supreme Council member Lee Hae-hun. Seven-term lawmaker Chung paid a visit to the Noryangjin Fish Market in Seoul early Tuesday in a bid to win the hearts of everyday citizens.
The Noryangjin Fisheries Market is a symbol of Seoul. The market provides fresh seafood to some 10 million Seoul citizens every morning. If I become the Seoul mayor, I will make Noryangjin a place where people can come and enjoy.
Chung and ex-Prime Minister Kim are seen as the front-runners to challenge the incumbent mayor Park Won-sun. In a joint survey conducted by Gallup Korea and the 중앙일보 newspaper, Park was ahead of Chung by only 0.4 percentage points, well within the margin of error, with 42.5%. Kim trails Park 34.3% to 47%. 66-year-old Kim, who served as prime minister under former president Lee Myung-bak, has vowed to make Seoul a vibrant city. He snapped at the recent merger of the main opposition Democratic Party and independent lawmaker An Chol-su's political group.
The term new politics has been sullied by the main opposition bloc, which champions the breaking of old political practices. I think it's better to use the term upstanding politics.
Former two-term lawmaker Lee Hae-hun also laid out her vision for Seoul.
Citizens want Seoul to become an economically vibrant city again. I will do that by making the capital a financial, medical, and tourist hub. I will also create more jobs and stabilize the real estate market.
It's widely thought any three of the Saenuri candidates would, if they won, use the 4-year mayoral term as a springboard to run in the 2017 presidential race. The ruling Saenuri Party is expected to pick a single candidate to take on incumbent Park Won-sun by April 25th. Seoul citizens will have to wait until June 4th to decide whether they want more of the same or a new face in City Hall. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
A UN panel that has been probing North Korea's human rights violations over the past year presented its final report to the Human Rights Council in Geneva on Monday. As widely expected, the isolated regime dismissed the allegations, and it wasn't alone. Big Brother China rejected the report as well, saying it lacked credibility. Our Choi Yoo-sun reports.
A special UN Commission on North Korean human rights has urged the international community's efforts to improve rights conditions in the reclusive state. Reporting to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Monday, the panel of inquiry said systematic and widespread crimes of humanity committed by the leadership in Pyongyang must no longer be neglected.
Allow humanitarian assistance in accordance with humanitarian and human rights principles. Allow separated families to communicate with each other through mail and telephone and to permanently reunite.
Comparing the North Korean situation to Nazi Germany, the Khmer Rouge's reign of terror in Cambodia and apartheid South Africa,
Commission Chair Michael Kirby talked about taking the case to the International Criminal Court. Dismissing the panel report, the North Korean ambassador Seo Se-pyong accused the U.S. and its allies of hostile intentions behind the findings. China, the North's biggest ally, also questioned the credibility of the report, which is based on testimonies outside the regime. Pyongyang did not cooperate with the probe. Responding to Kirby's calls to stop repatriating North Korean escapees, Beijing referred to them as illegal migrants. China's objection cast doubt over any future UN actions on the issue, since it is a veto-wielding Permanent Security Council member. Also during Monday's session, a member of the Japanese delegation, whose daughter is presumed to have been abducted to North Korea in 1978, got a chance to speak, prompting the North Korean ambassador to walk out in protest. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
For the latest news that impacts Korea and the world, join Yoo Ji-hye for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Move aimed at fostering startups as part of the government. Korean automakers aren't the only ones making inroads into the global market. The country's auto parts industry is also making great strides on the world stage, posting exports of more than $25 billion in 2013. Our Song Jae-sun has more.
This factory produces automobile engines and transmissions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to ensure that shipments meet order deadlines. That's because demand for its products soared 12% from a year earlier, largely because of orders from automakers overseas, which now represents some 40% of the plant's overall production.
The global market recognizes the high quality of Korean-made auto parts. In our case, we do not engage in aggressive promotion, but foreign buyers directly contact us for supply contracts.
This plant epitomizes a steady growth in exports of Korean auto parts, which is about double the pace of that for completely assembled cars. The recent expansion of the overseas production by local automakers Hyundai and Kia helped increase auto parts exports, but GM, Ford, Volkswagen, and other foreign companies accounted for well over a third of the parts exports. Korea's auto parts exports logged a record $26 billion last year, becoming the country's 7th biggest export item. The industry is gaining momentum as it diversifies its trade partners, faces tough competition as it tries to move up in the industry's pecking order. The toughest competition comes from Japan. According to a report released Monday by the Korea International Trade Association, Korea's auto parts export similarity index with Japan hit the highest at 0.56, meaning over half of the industry's export items are identical to those of Japan's.
Many Korean auto parts have a competitive edge in pricing over those from Japan and Germany while offering just as good a quality. But market leaders in Germany and Japan keep pushing for higher standards, just as Chinese makers are fast catching up.
Experts say the big challenge for Korean auto parts makers is improving their research and development capabilities, particularly for environmentally friendly automobiles such as electric cars. Song Jae-sun, ARIRANG News.
Starting next spring, a clause in the Korea-U.S. free trade deal will kick in that will allow American firms to own program providers in Korea. As some industry insiders have raised concerns that Korea's broadcasting industry will suffer as a result, the government is already preparing. Our Na Young-kyung reports.
Korea is bracing for an era of heated market competition in its broadcasting industry. Come next year, American media groups will be allowed to own program providers or PPs in Korea under the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Pact ratified in 2012. PPs are those that create content or have acquired the right to broadcast taped television and radio programs, for example, terrestrial broadcast stations or cable channels. And to better cope with the upcoming change, officials from the ICT Ministry and the Korea Communications Commission put their heads together with industry experts to consider possible negative effects.
In order to keep a competitive edge in the rapidly changing environment and competition in the global market, the government came up with a comprehensive plan aimed at improving the nation's broadcasting industry last December. This plan will be fleshed out and finalized by the end of April.
Insiders say American media groups have been visiting Korea since late last year to conduct market research and evaluate its potential. But experts in Seoul say U.S. companies making a foray into the domestic market will not likely have an immediate impact in the industry.
The effects will not be visible in the short run, but because the U.S. dominates the world's content market, we do need a long-term plan. It could work for the better and serve as an opportunity for our contents to set foot into the American market.
Officials say the profit structure for the PPs should also be modified so they can focus more on producing creative content rather than relying on commercials. 나현경, ARIRANG News.
Let's get the latest on the top stories on the global front. From the fallout of the referendum results in Crimea to the mystery surrounding the missing Malaysian airliner, we go live to our Paulie at the News Center. Nepal. Starting in Ukraine, we hear President Vladimir Putin has declared Crimea as an independent country, defying the West. How are Washington and European Union reacting to his move?
Well, the West is continuing to push for greater sanctions on Moscow over its intervention in the region. But Russian President Vladimir Putin remains defiant and is showing no signs of backing down. Our Connie Lee has the details.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has taken another step toward annexing Crimea. On Tuesday morning, he formally notified his parliament of Crimea's request to join Russia. This comes after President Putin signed a decree on Monday to recognize the Republic of Crimea as sovereign and independent. The executive order came just hours after the European Union and the U.S. imposed sanctions and asset freezes against Russian and Ukrainian officials.
We are imposing sanctions on specific individuals responsible for undermining the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and government of Ukraine.
The sanctions, which include travel bans, were in retaliation for Sunday's referendum vote in Crimea, which was deemed illegal by Western leaders. In the referendum, an overwhelming majority approved of leaving Ukraine and joining Russia. The results brought joy to Russians, not only in Crimea, but also in Moscow.
It's legal. I support Putin. I'm for reuniting Russian borders and the reunion of the Russian people.
Up to 60% of the residents in Crimea are Russian, but ethnic Tatars, who make up more than 10% of Crimea's population, are concerned about inter-ethnic conflict.
Of course we're afraid, but what can we do? Certainly not run away anywhere. No, we don't have that on our minds. I can't even think about it.
The Crimean parliament has declared all Ukrainian state property on the peninsula as property of the Crimean Republic. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, its parliament has approved the mobilization of up to 40,000 troops to counter Russian interference in the country. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Right, Paul, geographically speaking, it's quite a distance from Ukraine to the Korean peninsula, yet experts say geopolitically, the crisis there could have an impact here. How exactly?
Well, Russia's take-back of the Crimea region is expected to spark a rapid shift in the geopolitical landscape, and South Korea could find itself stuck in the middle of a Cold War-era paradigm. If the United States and European Union move forward with sanctions on Russia, it may force Seoul to freeze economic cooperation projects with Moscow. But one of the most significant impacts from declining Russian-American relations would be over North Korea. That's according to 38 North, a website run by the U.S. Korea Institute at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. Increased dialogue between Washington and Moscow on the North's nuclear program had helped to push forward issues related to the six-party talks. But the recent developments might mean that Pyongyang is less inclined to make diplomatic concessions, especially on denuclearization.
Right, and moving now to the Middle East, the North Korea-flagged oil tanker that got into trouble in Libya has now been seized by U.S. Special Forces. What happened there?
Well, the U.S. Department of Defense says a U.S. Navy team boarded the tanker on Monday in international waters south of Cyprus. No shots were fired and no one was injured during the 2-hour raid, which was requested by the Libyan and Cypriot governments and authorized by U.S. President Barack Obama. The tanker was carrying millions of dollars of crude oil and under the control of 3 Libyans. The Pentagon says the vessel is now being returned to a port under the control of the Libyan government. The ship, named the Morning Glory, was flagged in North Korea, but Pyongyang says it has nothing to do with it. The North Korean state news agency reported last week that an Egypt-based company was allowed to temporarily use the North Korean flag under a contract with Pyongyang.
Right, and now the story we've been covering for more than 10 days, the missing Malaysian jetliner. Any breakthrough in the search?
Unfortunately, even after 11 days and coordinated efforts from 26 countries, there's still no sign of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. During a press briefing Tuesday, the Malaysian government said that the search area has now been expanded to over 5.7 million square nautical kilometers. It's a massive area reaching from the border of Kazakhstan to the southern Indian Ocean. Acting Transport Minister His Hamuddin Hussein said the focus now is on gathering satellite data, analyzing radar information, and deploying additional air and surface teams. The Boeing 777 vanished on March 8th while en route to Beijing from Kuala Lumpur. Investigators say they are still believing the aircraft's movements were consistent with deliberate action by someone on the plane. China's ambassador to Malaysia said that no evidence has been found that would link any of the Chinese nationals on board to a possible hijacking or terrorist attack. GA?
All right, Paul, thank you very much for that update. We'll see you back in just about 2 hours. And time to get a check on the weather with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Now, Bo-kyung, the weather seems nice and sunny on the inside looking out, but conditions are quite different outside.
That's right. We're seeing high levels of yellow dust here in the nation, which is making it uncomfortable to stay outdoors for a long period of time. Taking a look at the current conditions, we're under the influence of a high pressure system that is moving south from China, which is why we're seeing clear skies across the map. However, the weather is not suitable for outdoor activities. Earlier today, yellow dust levels soared up to almost 300 micrograms per hour here in the capital. It has now decreased to 194, but that's still 4 times the normal level, so those with respiratory problems must take caution. Other than that, tomorrow looks to be a cloudy day with afternoon showers forecast in the southern regions. Moving on to Wednesday's readings, Seoul, Gwangju, and Busan all reach 14 degrees, while Daegu makes it to 15. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon and Jeju peak at 15 degrees, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang tops out at 8 and 2 degrees. Well, that's all the updates for Korea, and here's a look at the international weather. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates on our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.